Reflective Podcast.
Welcome back to the Fully Reflective Podcast. I'm here with this amazing alchemical brother named Octavio Pisano. He and I met some time back, but we'll probably get into that as it's relevant. How you doing today, bro? How you feeling right now in this moment?
I'm good. I'm okay.
Yeah.
You know, I'm about to go back to work, so there's always a sort of an anxiety right before.
And you've had some time off, and it kind of goes a little time off, and then you dive back in.
Yeah, I had an episode off right before the break, and then we had about 2 weeks of a break. So it's been like three and a half weeks of me not working.
Wow. And for those who don't know, who are you in terms of what your work is, and what's this work you're about to dive back into?
Well, my name is Octavio Pisano. I'm an actor. I've been on the last season of SVU, Law and Order SVU, which is a crazy thing to say now. It's what brought me to New York, and we're halfway done with season 23. So we'll see. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, fast segue right into it. I feel like I have such a privilege, and it's definitely part of the character that I've been appointed as, but I've been had this privilege to witness the behind the scenes that goes into a moment that others might just see as a thing called success, but the blossoming is such a process. And I mean, what was it like for you? Well, just quick context, about a year ago, I was talking to you, and we're thinking of things that we can do to make a film or do something, because I think you were working at a car wash. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny because I just reflected on the whole year because of New Year's Eve.
Right.
And last year I directed my first feature film. I opened up the year with that. I went to Florida to shoot a film that I wrote.
Right.
And fast forward 3 months, I basically went broke. I ran out of money, and I had to take down a job in California washing cars, which was the only thing that allowed me to audition and keep doing what I was doing. And then after that, I wasn't even a week into working that job, and I got a call from my manager, and there was an offer on the table for a Dick Wolf project. And it ended up being this, which is his baby. A week later, I was packing my stuff, and I was moving across country to New York. That's been the last 6 months of my life. It's been crazy. A real roller coaster.
So you've experienced the literal thing called a dream come true with this project, at least.
Yeah, I mean, the
Right.
Dream always seems great from the outside. It all comes with its own struggles and everything, especially during these times. But yeah, I literally went from having nothing on my bank account and taking a job as washing cars to being a lead on a TV show, and not just any TV show, but a very well-oiled machine that's been going for 23 years.
Right.
And I guess it happened overnight, but it's been a long time coming, right?
I see a nice door handle there.
Yeah.
So, you're a multimedia expressionist. I don't know if many people use that term, but I use that term because I see those sticky notes on the wall. I see that painting on the wall. You have a beautiful young daughter. You make your food. You dress yourself. You probably shave your beard. Probably brush your own teeth. You are probably driving cars. So it's in all these different ways. Someone's told me, I'm sure they told you, it's like you got to focus on one thing. And there's an incredible amount of value in that sentiment of just focusing on one thing, but it's just not how life works. Yeah, we can focus on one thing, but it's so many things that go into you getting a job on Law and Order. It had to be, you had to make the film. You had to, and even before, it was a couple of years ago, you got that investment, and you had made that short film with Jess and put everything into that, thought that that was going to be it, and it didn't be it. But that ended up coming back later and helped people that ended up wanting to hire you to, direct and write and star. You had to fail at the other thing, but it was never a failure. It just wasn't what it was,
Right.
what you wanted it, or thought it was going to be in the moment. I'll never forget.
Right.
I'm pretty sure I was just there, and then I saw you at Whole Foods, or no, did we intentionally meet at Whole Foods that morning?
No,
And
we ran into each other.
We ran into each other at Burbank at Whole Foods.
Yeah.
This is probably, was this past summer or before?
No.
This is 2 years ago, maybe 2 summers ago. So summer 2019. You were like in it. You were like, you had spent that money. Your car had gotten towed. You were talking about just struggling as to where food was coming from that evening, and not just for yourself, but for your lady and your daughter. And
Right.
so I'm building a palette of a question. It's not really a question, but I call it a baton, because it's just a theme and a frequency to then look into. But your paintings are so, I never saw you painting 5 years ago, but it's this, ultimately it's all one flower, call it, that you had to pollinate one angle at a time. But now it's led to a thing where you're, call it corporate art, if you will. It's like a big business art,
commercial art.
And probably a lot of people envy that. A lot of people could probably say, oh, I wish I had how many actors in LA are there right now that said, oh, what I would do to get a job on, a TV show that insures my bills or whatever. Speak a bit, if you will, on that frequency of like,
I'll take that baton, because actually that's been happening. You don't have to go that far to actors in LA, but actors on the set that come in as guest stars, and they look at me and they say, "Oh my God, you're so blessed because you're a series regular and you're on the show." And I'm looking at them. I'm like, I mean, we're both doing this scene right now without all the extra ideas and terminologies. We're both in the scene, and guess what? The scene is yours. I'm just holding the space for you. I'm just there so that you can have this amazing performance, But meanwhile, in between takes, your mind is going, oh, but I want to be in your position. I'm like, no, right now, I want to be in your position because you got the meat of the scene. You know what I mean? So it's all about perspective. And I think part of how, where we met, and with Steven Anderson being one of the most influential actors or coaches in my life, he taught me to approach life as an artist. He didn't teach me that. He reminded me of it, because I always did when I was a kid. Everything I approached, without even labeling it as such or calling it what it is I was an artist, right? I was painting when I was a kid, and I was doodling. I was creating worlds in my living room with little action figures and Legos, and I was always creating. I was always daydreaming. I was always fantasizing. I just didn't know there was an actual career path or an actual way of making a living being that. But now, whereas I was doing that as a kid unconsciously, now I'm doing it consciously, right? So I approach life as an artist. I approach parenting as an artist. I approach driving down the street as an artist, right? And you're always outward directed. You're always considering other beings and not being driven by your own ego desires, So whether you're cooking a meal or you're playing with your kid or you're writing a script or you're painting, it's all an expression of who you are, if you're approaching it that way.
Which I would call that integral.
Right.
Integral, first time I ever heard that term was a philosopher dude named Ken Wilber. And I did my best to digest his books. It's a little heady, really heady actually. But very heady. But the way that he proposed, and God bless his heart, someone had to do it. He had diagrams. He had stuff that for me was so helpful that I was like, whoa, someone saying spirituality and society and your internal experience of being a human and your external it's all one thing. And if you can integrate it all as one thing, then it stops being different things, and you stop having the need to be different characters for it, and you are all just the one that's in all of it, no matter what it is. One thing you pointed at is like, which, or at least how my framework then interprets and reflects it, is what a blessing to be a guest star on Law and Order. And yet, I'm sure it's easy to understand probably for anybody in other situations too. It's like, yeah, but I still want to be that guy. You know, I'm at the car wash, and yeah, but I'm not the manager. Or, you know, I just got a raise. Yeah, but I'm still not that person.
Right.
Can you, in your own framework, what is the difference between people that live in FOMO, not just the fear of missing out, but the feeling of missing out, that literal state of separateness, perpetuity, that they're always feeling that's not now. It's not good. It's not, yeah, but I'm not who I want. Yeah, but this toast, I burnt the toast. You know what, man, this was not as good as last night's meal. Oh man, I wanted the movie to be better, and it's like a waste of our money. Shouldn't have done that. Or it's always this narrative that something isn't how it's supposed to be, so they're always missing out on a version of reality that's not present, versus the person who is embracing life as it is and seeing it, call it holistically, whole, as this now present that's perfect, even if it's maybe now a reflection that there, I want some adjustments, but this is perfect. What's the difference? And now you're on set with someone like Ice-T. I'm interested in hearing about that. But what would you say is the difference, even in your own journey, and then also seeing others as a reflection of your own situation, internal, external? What's the difference between someone that's one more comma. Stephen often talked about it as rising sun versus setting sun. It's like you can see the scene the same way from two different perspectives. You know, you're dying and you're happy, or you're dying and you're sad. What's in your framework, how has that shown itself to you as a lesson or a guidepost as to feeling like something's always missing, as to almost, yeah, what's the difference between missing out on nothing and people that are always missing?
I mean, I don't think life is black and white. You know,
there's gradients for sure.
Yeah, I think there's certain aspects of human nature that can be categorized as black and white, and that are necessary to be black and white. Like, but even, you know, I was gonna say, like, if you kill someone, that's wrong and it's not right. But again, if that person is, you know, coming into your house and creating violence against your family, and you stand up for them in your house, and, you know, it's all gray areas, right? So I don't think there's, in my experience, any person that I've met that is completely zen and completely at ease with everything. And those who are not, and who are always in FOMO, I think it's a mixture of things. I think everyone is in a spectrum. And, you know, I think human nature is by default contradiction, right? We live in contradictions. We live in paradoxes, right?
Paradoxical.
So I think the feeling of missing out, or the FOMO, that's just ego. That's just not being aware of everything that is, and you focusing on something that isn't. And I think we all are guilty of it. You know, like, I don't, you know, I haven't. It's not that you figure it out. It's just, can you stay in the perspective long enough so that you can see it, right? Because I go in and out, and some days I'm super grateful, and some days I'm like, oh, this is, I don't want, you know, yes, I want more, but I'm not desperately seeking to get more right now because I'm content. But then some other days I want that thing that's not here. But again, that's part of what's going to get me to go get that thing and bring it into reality. So it's all part of, like you said, it's all one, you know, it's an integration. And I think that, I mean, we live our life with a philosophy that we just coined, the integration of work and family, right? Because I grew up in a situation where my father was always gone on business trips and, you know, doing work and everything. And the family was split. There was two directions that the family was going for that reason. And in my line of work, I'm always moving, I'm always traveling, right? I'm always, on a different set in a different country, in a different city. And I realized that if I wanted any kind of consistency and stability in my life, I had to somehow integrate my work life and my family life, that it's all one, that we can work together as a family, and just by planting that seed in my head every single day and talking about it and writing about it, you know, life started bringing people into my life that showed me that it was possible. Like one of the biggest shows I was on, called Coyote, which is on I think CBS All Access. The director, who was also the executive producer, was Michelle McLaren, and she's one of the most successful directors in TV. She was an executive producer for Breaking Bad. She's been a director for Game of Thrones episodes. I mean, her curriculum goes on and on. And she was on set directing us with a baby, with a 6-month-old baby in her arms, right? Wow. And she was like bouncing the baby and just like, Octavio, go here, go here, That's when my mind opened up and I was like, no, there's no limitation to that integration. This is the way of the future, really, because we are developing a new world, a new system in which that can actually be the norm, right? That you don't have to leave your kids, which traditionally it's always been, right? I mean, sending your kids to school has been around for 100, 200 years. I don't know how long. But before that, it was a village situation where the parents taught their kids mathematics, astronomy, whatever it is. So I think we're going back to that. And I think that's what we've been doing, where I'm not paying somebody else to teach my kid things I know that I can teach my kid. And because of the situation that most people are in, they don't have the time to do that. But I've been blessed enough as an actor to be able to work and then stay home for long periods of time and just dive into homeschooling, basically.
That's such a reflection of it's not a breaking of boundaries. It's been a slow dissolving of certain boundaries that society has told us, like, these are these boxes, you got to stay here. Right. and then there's those avant-garde kind of trailblazers that show us in life as permission slips. Nah, that's not, you might have thought that, but you didn't see me yet. And sounds like that lady on set was that. And who are some other permission slips that have, which for me, and a theme of why I started this podcast, is that I could not see myself without others to reflect myself back to me. Is that's actually part of my experience of what illumination is, or what awakening is. It's like you start seeing, this old line, the deeper and the more I know myself, the more deeply I can know anyone. And seeing another as a reflection. So it's like, wow, that's how they're rocking with their situation. Wow, I didn't know that was even a possible posture. And it being, so I want to look at a couple things. So in being a writer, then also being a lead actor, in being a director, but then being a writer, in being this kind of artist that wears multiple hats, but then being a human being that wears different hats. And it's been a topic of concern over the past while, of like, the integration of the masculine and feminine, where there's women that are saying, I don't want to be in these old rudimentary, rigid, pathways, and a man saying, I want to be a little bit more feminine and feel. But then also how it's not black and white, there's a spectrum, and that can turn into a distortion too, and then turn into just, well, I don't want to be any of the things that society wants from me. And then it just turning into a full blast, revolt or rebellion. But it's like at the same time, you got some responsibilities that you got to knock in, and you happen to be in this vessel, I'm in this vessel. This is what comes with that. What are some, because you have a child, and moving forward into your life, you're going to be a reflection for that person. as to what is okay. And obviously, you know, you and your partner will both be masculine and feminine mirrors for this young being who is blossoming in a world where there's all types of variety. There's everything you can think of.
Right.
Kind of a dual-headed question. What's the way that you're feeling called to anchor your family culture with? Like, what is this kind of your North Star, so to speak, in terms of the variety, in terms of being a reflection to your family, but also who are people out there, maybe some inspiring artists that have shown you that permission slip to, you got to be the feminine masculine, you got to be the masculine feminine. The man who cries is kind of adored in acting, but the man who cries in the world is called, at least in the old world, you know, the past couple hundred years, a man's not supposed to cry. But as an artist,
Right.
you're like, whoa, that's an idea that's in the way of my evolution. What's a North Star for you moving forward with that? And then what are a couple mirrors that have given you that permission?
So you said a couple of things, but one of the first things, yeah, we can't see ourselves, right? We can only know ourselves, and I've known this intuitively since I was a kid. I would look at myself in the mirror and be like, that's not me. That's a mirror, a physical reflection of me, but that's not me, right? Because I would notice there was limitation to how I saw myself in the mirror because of the angle, right? So if I'm looking straight, unless I have three mirrors to the side, I can't see a certain angle that you can see, say, when somebody's shooting, you know, they're taking pictures of you and you don't know, and they're from this angle. And all of a sudden you see a different version of yourself in that picture that you've never seen because you can't see it through a straight two-dimensional reflection. So no matter what the reflection was, that's what it was. It was a reflection, whether it's a picture or a film about you or a painting, somebody drew a painting, that's a reflection of who you, it's not who you are. So you can't see yourself, but you can see another seeing you. And so that has value in itself because there's a blind spot that you can't see. Even in a car, you have mirrors all around, but there's still a blind spot that you got to turn your head over to be able to see. Well, you can't turn your head and see yourself. So you can only know yourself from the inside out, right? And it took me a while because, well, now let's integrate into the next question. You talk about the integration of the masculine and feminine and who you are and all these varieties. And I think that you can tell who is following their nature, and you can tell who is going from a wound. And I can only speak for myself, right? But I had a specific nature growing up, and then through a wound, that nature got distorted, and the expression of who I am got limited to an idea of who I am. And I was like, no, this is the box that I'm in. This is who I am. So any expression outside of this, it's not who I am, even though the expression of the impulse was natural. And it took me a long time to be able to accept all parts of who I am so that I'm able to express that from a natural place and not from a wound place, right? So that happened when my daughter was born. And somebody told me when she was being born, which, by the way, in terms of, and I was just having a conversation with somebody else, people that I admire and that I look up to and that I follow, there isn't one. There isn't one because nobody's ever done what I want to do. And that, I think that goes, huh?
There's been permission slips though, right?
Yeah. There's been, but what I'm trying to say is that there's not, there was somebody who allowed me to be a certain way as an actor. There was somebody who allowed me to be a certain way as a father. There was somebody who allowed me to be a certain way as a Mexican. There's somebody who allowed me to be a certain way as an American citizen. So there's been many reflections that have inspired certain parts of me, but there's not been one that has a whole integration.
Right, because you're the only one of you. These can only be single angles, really. But
I believe that everything that I'm here to do on this earth was already in me since before I was born, right? So somebody told me when my daughter was going to be born, they said the tree is already in the seed. All you have to do is water it. You don't have to create a tree. You don't have to. No, the tree was already in the seed. So everything that seed was supposed to be was already in it. And we just got to make sure the sun is hitting it right, and that there's no bugs coming around, and that the water is, nurturing it. So that goes for everyone. Everyone, even though we're all the same, we're all human beings, we all have a unique spark, right? So we're all here to do something unique, and that nobody has ever done before, nobody will ever do. You are unique in your own way to what you're going to do. Now, there are many parts to that thing, right? There are many bricks to the building. So there's people that have a certain type of brick, and you go, oh, I can use that and I can use this, but ultimately your building is going to be unique to you. So in that sense, my reflections are all disintegrated. I know people that I respect as an artist that I don't respect as a father, right? I know people that I respect as a father that I don't respect as a businessman. Like, my grandfather was a great father. He was a great grandfather. He was a great family man. And he was just not a good businessman. And he told me many stories, and there were lessons in itself. But so there was a part of him that was not integrated that I'm trying to integrate. So I look at other people who inspire me as businessmen, who necessarily they don't inspire me as family men, because they spend all their time in business and their family, everything's failing. And like, say, Matthew Mcconaughey is a big pointer for me in terms of family, in terms of balancing work and family. And yet there's some career choices that I don't necessarily admire, right? Or I don't want. That's not me. That's him, and I respect his path. He's taught me certain things in terms of fatherhood, but it's always from an outside perspective, right? But I think Steven Anderson gave me a big permission slip, who's one of my greatest acting coaches. There was an actress I met in a film that I don't remember her name right now, but the way she was in the scene, I've never seen in real life an actor conduct themselves in that way, in that emotionally driven and raw expression, and yet so conscious of everything that was going on, and so aware and so in control of the business side of it. She was aware of the time the scene was taking place. She was the lead actor, in the movie. So she had to have all these different hats, and that's what she gave me a permission slip to be able to say, oh, you can be an actor and director at the same time. You can go from being highly intellectual and writing and being in that headspace, and also being completely emotional and just expressing onto a piece of canvas, and also being completely primal and going outside and playing sports, playing soccer with a bunch of guys on the street. And also, it's all these different things. Oh, you can be everything. You don't have to be a certain way to be like, So I realized that, yes, I could cry, and I could also get in the ring and fight someone. And I can also, cook a beautiful meal, and I can be dramatic and I can be comedic at the same time. But for me, it's all the intention behind the expression, right? And there's difference. And I noticed the difference when I directed a film. And earlier this year, I had a scene. I wrote the script. So I had written this scene where my character was receiving information, and everyone, from the producers to the other actors to everyone, we all thought that this character needed to break in that moment. And we all thought, from an intellectual perspective, that the breaking was going to be cry, right? Now, we shot it 3 times. And when I was editing the film, I realized that the right choice was that he didn't cry when he received the information. Now, me as an actor, I had to go there. And so I used a certain method, and I used certain things in my life that brought me to tears. But the things that were bringing me to tears wasn't the same thing as what was bringing the character to tears. right? So for me, what I used was an imagination of my daughter dying, right? And I think so, or something that had to do with my daughter. So my emotion wasn't about myself; it was about my daughter. Whereas the character was having an emotional reaction to his own life, and so my vulnerability that came from a selfless place didn't fit the emotional vulnerability that the character needed because he was being selfish. It was about himself. So the tears had to be different. And so I noticed that yes, crying is a good thing in acting, but it's the why that is, that paints the picture of who you are. So I don't think there's any right or wrong uh, actions. I think there's only integrative actions or disintegrative actions, right? Like you spoke on holiness or being whole. Are they connected or are they disconnected? And you can tell that not intellectually, you can tell when somebody's coming from ego and when somebody's coming from their soul, even in performance. Even people who don't understand acting, they don't understand film or anything, they could just tell that
What are
guy is
some
being truthful.
what are some tells when you see an artist coming from ego or coming from soul, or what, even how you would articulate that?
I mean, for me, it's a feeling first, but because I'm emotional and intellectual at the same time, first it's a feeling, and then my intellect goes and dissects. Oh well, this is why logically I don't think he's coming from truth. This is why I feel like he's coming from ego. And again, I've seen two actors in the same scene, one of them be completely big and circus-like, and the other one be completely still and no show off, no nothing, and yet both are real and both are true. So
It's very subjective too.
tricky. It's very subjective, but I think truth, it's a feeling, and you can just feel it. You can, even when it comes to music or singing, yes, there's subjective. Some people like this type of music, some people, but when that singer hits that note, everyone in the audience, regardless of their subjective perspective, just goes crazy. You can just feel it when that person just reaches that soulful note. And that soulful is pure truth, pure spirit, right? I think it goes to anything, to writing, to painting. You can just tell when the ego was in the mix, and those colors were, it's too thought off, it's too constructed, it's not freely expressed.
Okay, I gotta bridge from that to another. I think a deepening of that same river water there. So so let's say the singer hits the note, but if that singer's not crafted straight up, just calibrated as a vocal, like their vocal ability isn't craft, and they don't know about but they can't think about it in that moment, so they release in that moment, and in that moment they hit this and everyone converges their awareness on a single molecular point of attention. And if it's a stadium, everyone disappears into that moment together. So me and I know a handful of other people call that zero pointing, where there's a zero point. It's a point in the nearby area that evaporates everything else, because this point is where it comes from, and it's so powerful that I think it's love. I think it's a version of love that deteriorates all other anything and brings everyone's attention to this moment. All of a sudden, you're out in the woods and you're fighting, bad guys, and all of a sudden you hear a baby cry, or whatever. Just an example of like a sound that can go zoop, and it brings everyone's attention there. So that is one term, and it's an idea called zero point or zero pointing. The other aspect of this, and I'm pretty sure we've talked about it at some point, but this is amazing author, and one of her books, author named Ayn Rand, and the book's called Fountainhead. And this is something that, it's funny because I've leaned into my pops about this, and I'm like, do you know who you are? And he's like, of course, it's like, there's one level where it's like, of course I know who I am. But there's another level that I think comes with being that that you can't know. And it's almost like you don't even want to know too much about who maybe other people think you are. And you can know to an extent, but where the love is in being the 0 point. And I don't want to have too much attention on what other people think of me, because that's almost like the crack cocaine for the ego. And I think I've been very attentive to that moment where I see a soul choose to push that egoic opportunity away. I've been very interested in that. It's been something that really drove me to Bruce Lee. I saw this way he felt. For me, it was a feeling. It was a feeling of like, whoa, he's a badass, but there's something about his cocky badass that's not, it's a feeling. It's not a weirdo, bad turn off cocky confidence. It's something that's like, man, that's a soul moment or something like that. So this baton I want to give back to you is, it's on the idea of being a fountainhead, because let's be honest, there's a spectrum of humanity. And I had a session recently, and someone was saying, the question was something around purpose, and fulfillment, and acknowledging, and we talked about this too, being boots on the ground, acknowledging it's okay that I'm not fulfilled, I'm not satisfied, I'm hungry, I'm determined, I'm actually frustrated, and I'm the furthest thing from content. And that's actually fantastic, because at least me being clear about it, I can now utilize that fire and create steam and move forward towards something. But if you're going to deny that you're frustrated or deny that you're not satisfied, to me, I think it's an actual toxic state, because it's the state of denial. This person was making a reference to saying like, well, there's God in everyone. There's a God, there's God, there's spirit, there's soul, there is the divine in all beings. Of course, yes, and we bow to that. And I'm a little bit more activated and turned on by Bruce Lee than I am by Joe Schmo on the sidewalk there with the please give me some quarters cup in his hand. And I've coming from someone who has sat down next to many of those Joe Schmoes, whatever their names are, and sit down and be like, yo, how'd you get here? And maybe for whatever reason, my heart is called to give them $1, or I've given everything I've had in certain moments, because for whatever reason, I saw that soul is way more in need of it than me. And so that was a moment for me to, change that energy. But as an artist, and we're talking about as a father, we're talking about as a human, there is a spectrum of those who inspire us. And some people don't inspire us at all. Actually, we're deactivated by them. And you were just kind of articulating around, truth. What a subjective conversation this can become quickly about something that can ultimately be determined as an objective, can't be subjective about it. It's almost in the definition of it. But this term that I got from this book by Ayn Rand called Fountainhead, the term is fountainhead. And in the book, she articulates this very vivid scenario in society where there's these artists that are, bragging about who has done what, and so concerned with the hierarchy and the status, and they live in this world of comparison, and it's industry, and it's it's a belonging thing. It's about who's belonging, and it's society, it's relationships, and they're all what she calls second-handers. And in the movie Blade Runner, I would call them, it's obviously different scenario, but I'd call them replicants, because there's a scenario where someone is so in touch with their soul and so driven, not by society. Society is a reflection and it's influencing them for sure, but they're driven by something inside of them that no one else can ever see, ever know, ever hear, taste, or touch. But it's this intangible, invisible place that whispers, scream loud messages into their soul, and they have to follow that compass. And when they follow that compass, they create something and they have to share it with the world. It's the only point. I'm not creating this to keep it to myself. How tragic would it be if Van Gogh or Da Vinci or Picasso or Basquiat just lit a flame to every one of the things that they had created as soon as. It's not the point. The point is in sharing it, but not in sharing it. There's a paradox here, and I'm almost done with the baton.
Yeah.
What is this place that magnetizes someone to be great? And what's your relationship with that place in face of those who would act like they are it, but in that invisible moment, there are those who pretend and there are those who are really it. There are those who are the wolf for real, and there are those who are wearing like, a Halloween onesie costume with, of the wolf, and it's a cotton Pokemon wolf, and it's like, I'm the wolf. What's your relationship with that place that is, it's where samurai warriors are born, but it's also where yogis are born. It's where the pure artist, I feel. And it's in this relation. I'm not asking anybody this. I'm asking you this as my brother that I've seen move into this space of like, I don't want to just make good art. Like, yeah, there's stuff that I'm going to do that's probably going to be solid, but there's this critique. There is this awareness of self and self's potential. And I'm also gentle about not grasping or clinging to it, but I'm building some kind of a relationship with that space of what is the most powerful thing that I could be connected to? What is the most potent art that wants to move through me? I want to spend my time in a useful way. I want to do something of meaning that lights me up or whatever. What is your relationship with that fountainhead space and the second-hander space, or that replica space?
Well, it's the space every single day of my life I'm trying to reach. It's my daughter's learning how to play the piano right now, and it's either in tune or it's out of tune. And she doesn't know yet. She doesn't know how to read music. She doesn't know these things, but the little that she knows, if she hits the wrong note, she just knows. She's like, no, that wasn't it. It just doesn't sound right. It just, when it's it, and it's supposed to be the next note, and not every note's the same. Not every song's the same. It has a bunch of different notes, infinite notes, but you could just tell, nah, that wasn't on beat. That wasn't on tune. And if it was purposeful, then you can be offbeat. Then that's the purpose, right? But I think you got to know what being in tune means, what being aligned means, to be able to play with the out of tune part of it. Because I feel like I said, it's a spectrum and it's a contradiction, right? Because I've been in that space, and I've also been the replicant, the I think you called them replicants, right?
Yeah, the wannabe.
Right, the wannabe. I've been both. It doesn't define who I am. Who I am I've always been who I am since day one. But I'm either in tune with who I am or I'm out of tune. And for the first 25 years of my life, I didn't know I was out of tune. I was playing the song of who I am, but I was out of tune. Nobody had shown me, this is what being in tune feels like. This is what being in tune sounds like. And it's still, like, you don't play the guitar for a couple months, even if nobody touches it, it's going to be a little out of tune. That's just the nature of instruments, right? This human vessel, and not just the physical part, but the emotional, the intellectual, all of it is an instrument for the universe to play its music, right? And so if you're not constantly playing it, if you're not constantly trying to be in tune, you're going to be out of tune, and you're not going to be in that flow state. And that flow state, in a song, you got many different instruments, right? Sometimes you got a guitar solo. Sometimes you got somebody singing. When that person's singing, you don't want the guitar solo to go and say, that wouldn't be in tune. That wouldn't be aligned, right? So there's times when you're called to being the one that speaks, and then there's times when you're called to being the one that listens. Both are in tune if that's what's being called. But if both are talking at the same time, or both are just listening at the same time, there's no music, right? So it's all an ebb and flow. And it's like, I think about when I played basketball. There was times when the buzzer was about to ring, and there was like 10 seconds in the thing, and I get the ball, and I know the right thing is to shoot. The more generous thing would be to pass it to someone, right? Nobody wants to be what do you call it? The
Ball hog?
Nobody wants a hog, yeah, a ball hog. Nobody wants to be a ball hog. But in that moment, you know you got the shot, and you know the right things for you to take that shot, even if you miss it. But ego comes in and says, no, you're gonna be a ball hog, and if you miss, no, and all of a sudden you pass the ball, and then that extra pass ran the buzzer, and boom, there's no shot. So you did the right thing, but it wasn't the right thing in the moment. It wasn't the most in tune in the moment. So we go back to not being, there's no black and white, there's no right and wrong, because the right thing can be the wrong thing at the right time. And
but there is an alignment, and the environment will always reflect back to us the alignment. Like you did follow the call to bring some tears forth, but then in the edit you're like, yeah, but that's not the right choice. So there is at some point, and you'll like where I take this, because we've been talking about philosophical, artistic, all this stuff up here, but let's talk about the practicality of physical health alignment. Because you talk about you didn't know you were not in tune. Well, I'm pretty sure both of us at some mine was my 24th year. I almost died is what I felt like. I had Epstein-Barr, came from mono. I pulled my Achilles. I tried to get back to working out. First day on the bench press. Oh, I'm gonna get. Oh my God! I almost dropped the bar on me. My a disc in my neck popped out, or my spine, or whatever, and I had a neck brace on. I was like, it was a reflection to me that whatever I've been doing, nothing matters if I don't have my physical well-being. My literal physical body was missing alignment. And this led me to yoga. This led me to herbs. This led me to looking at what GMO, I didn't even know what non-GMO meant. What has been your journey, or I'll say it, what has been your health enlightenment, like I know in the past literally couple of years, you've been going through a physical well-being transformation. You've been learning about things. You've been going through a healing of investigating and looking at probably stuff that you never looked at before, but the pain got so intense that it made you look at it. So how does that connect to everything? You can't make no art if you freaking physical pain. You can't even think about creating. Where are you now with your physical health and your health journey, and what's the wisdom you've learned in your health journey, specifically with nourishment, nutrition, and physical health?
Well, I think somebody said, because I've been on a health journey for about 7-8 years, which also got triggered by an injury. I pulled a disc. I got a herniated disc that was pinching my sciatic nerve all down to my toe, and I couldn't move for like a year and a half. I was literally on the floor with ice packs on my back. It was bad. And that literally forced me to study the body, study all different processes and how to heal myself, because I didn't want to. It was right around the time that my daughter was born, and I didn't want to be in a hospital bed when she was born. I didn't want to go through surgery and have to do physical therapy for all those months. So I had to put in the work before that. And I found, luckily, because of the internet, I found other people who had healed themselves with the same issues that I had. So they gave me hope, and they gave me a light post, right? But I would say I'm still trying to figure it out. And somebody said, I can't remember who it was, they said, as long as the environment is sick, we're always going to be fighting for our health, right? No matter what you do inside of your body, it's not going to matter if the environment is sick, if the soil is toxic, if the air we breathe is toxic, if the things that are going into the fruits. Like somebody said, there is no 100% non-GMO food anymore. There's no organic food unless you're growing it in a greenhouse, because even if it's organic, even if the seeds are non-hybrid, even if the soil and the rain that falls upon the food is still filled with all these toxins. So there's no, unless you're growing it in a greenhouse, it's not 100% organic or non-GMO. But you try your best, because you're in this mitigation and you're trying to get to that place of being in tune. And there's so many environmental toxins that are constantly attacking us that we just gotta every day, like they say, if you're not getting healthier, you're getting sicker, right? If you're not getting stronger, you're getting weaker. And I mean, the first part of my life, the first 10 years of my life were all dependent on my parents. Well, my parents, what kind of food they got, what kind of water supply they had, what kind of environment they provided, right? But then after, I left my house when I was like 14 years old. Since then, I've been on my own in terms of taking care of my own temple, my own body. And I wasn't for the next 15 years. I just, I was destroying my body. I was smoking cigarettes. I was drinking alcohol. I was staying up late. I was not sleeping right. I was working out consistently, but I didn't know that I had all these kinks and all these muscle knots and all these nerve impingements. And so I was building muscle, which just means I was tensing up around these injuries that were unhealed, because I played sports when I was a kid and I loved going full force, playing soccer, basketball, whatever it was, and not stretching at the end. When the coach would be like, "Oh, it's time for warm up," I'd be dilly-dallying. I was like, "Yeah, warm up, whatever. Give me the ball. I want to go in." Or afterwards, I'm done with the game. I'm gonna go hang out, and I didn't stretch, right? So you just walk in, and you're over the years, you become this tense rubber thing, and then you try to build strength on top of it. It's gonna collapse into a herniated disc. That's gonna push you. It's like, yo, you gotta do a little more subtle, like yoga stuff that stretches the body first, and I did a lot of muscle work. I went to chiropractors. I went to acupuncturists, anything that could help me get aligned. And I'm still going. I'm still dealing with kinks that would probably stem from 10-year injuries that I didn't look at. Yeah, I think that answers the question.
I think this is an interesting, again, the term mirror for me is just the most helpful. It's an interesting mirror of, like, we're talking about art, which can become such a conversation of subjectivity. But, like, as you know, someone that I look to as a mirror is Kanye, also Cudi, also Pharrell, but also my dad. I love this story, and I've heard him tell it in a variety of settings, but it's always the same setting of, one of the greatest pieces of art that's ever moved through him is a song called Stranglehold. And it's like 8 minutes long. And literally you go on Spotify, it's like the song that's most played on his thing. Matthew McConaughey has actually said that it's his favorite song. It's all these different ways that it shows up in society. And I think such an interesting mirror of my dad's essence, because the story is that he did it and it was like his full passion. And it's, there's a 5-minute guitar solo in the middle of the song with, a hook on the other side of it. But it's like 5 minutes of just instrumentation and it's poetic. I mean, it barely sounds like rock. It's like almost some kind of jazz, like, elongated soliloquy of instrumentation, and it's just a funky groove. Anyways, he tells a story of how the the band and the manager and like the agent one day are like, "Can you come, in the studio and meet with us?" And he sits down and it's like an intervention, and they're like, Ted, we think it's a great song, but it's just too long and we don't think it can make it on the album. And he was just like, I don't know what exactly, I'm not going to attempt to quote or whatever like that. But he was basically like, "Fuck you people. This is exactly how it's going to be. Don't you dare touch it. I might actually go to prison for murder if you try to fuck with this perfect piece of fucking art. You fucking idiot, imbecile. This is, and he, in the whole, volcano, the buffalo, he talks about the buffalo energy as a big reflection of his essence. And it's just like, there's a storm there. Yeah, fuck that storm. And I'm walking into it. And he's also talked about bandmates telling him that he should change things. And he's literally, he's talked about punching people in the face for arguing with him about whether an art piece should change. Now, this is obviously very subjective because he's a very subjective person. But I also look at how stories about how Kanye's been, and I haven't been in a creative setting with him yet, but it's like there is a moment where, as an artist, it's not it's the subjective and the objective merge, the craft and the art merge, your idea of what you think is good and what's actually needed merge. There isn't two options, there isn't a spectrum, there's nothing but this right here, and it's the choice. And it's like, I'm either going to shoot this or I pass it. And that in the moment, I'm going to look back on that moment as like, when you were telling me the story about the buzzer beater, do I pass it moment? I have these experiences, which I would call them traumas from my high school path of playing basketball, where because of my nerves, I, in a moment of wanting to be, I got so overwhelmed. I remember passing the ball to the referee one time, and and just being like, because the crowd was going crazy, and I was coming off the bench. I was a junior, and it was on varsity for like 2 games, and I was like,
Right.
"This is my chance. This is my chance. Okay, okay, okay." Yeah. And
Right.
I didn't think. I wasn't present. I didn't make the right choice. It was the wrong choice. Now, yes, in the grand scheme of looking at my spiritual journey, it was the perfect
Right.
thing because I needed that experience. Fantastic.
Right.
That's the integral lens. But if we're
Right.
talking about what's helpful and not helpful, that shit was not helpful. We talk about the body, just straight up. I don't need to hit the bench press right now. My shit is
Right.
broken. There is
Right.
a right and a wrong, and obviously, you know, I'm a yoga teacher and a trauma therapist. There's an incredible spectrum of gentle recognition of like, man, it's so not black and white. You know, that person didn't know that they were hurting you, and we don't need to blame. It's find the in between, find the happy medium. It's yes, and this is part of the paradox because in some moments there is no black and white. In other moments,
Right.
there's only black and white. So
Right.
this is also part of the reflection as well. But saying all that scenario to come back to the body and to say, man, when you're right here with the cup about to enter, and all of a sudden your stomach rumbles, you can kind of either A, listen, or B, ignore it. And then A, you got to listen then a week later, or don't, or then you're in the hospital and then you say, all right, I think I'm going to listen now. But I think that's an interesting metaphor for this like subjective, objective, right, wrong, black, white, only in the gray area kind of conversation. Because, you know, as artists, it's like to put dairy in the coffee or no dairy in the coffee, or to no coffee or coffee.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know what the baton is there, but it feels just like an interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you said something about the connection of health and art, and you can't create if you're broken, right? I mean, I literally couldn't paint when my back was out, when I had the herniated discs. I couldn't stand, I couldn't sit, I couldn't do anything but just lay down, right? But if we go back to the original definition of what being an artist is, that it's not just creating art, but that your whole life is an art piece. That driving down the street is an art piece, and how you drive and how, you know, everything has an intention that's higher than itself. Then the expression is not limited to painting or to write, because when I was on the floor, I was still creating. I have scenes in scripts that I've written that come from the time that I was on the floor and I couldn't move, right? So the expression still happened, meaning like you can't stop the expression, but obviously it's all about, are you enjoying the dance or you're not? Because, you know, we think, oh, we're dancing for other people. We're making art for other people. We're singing for other people. That's part of it. You need an audience, yes. Otherwise, what's the point? But the other part is for you to enjoy it. You enjoy expressing yourself. You enjoy painting. You enjoy writing. You enjoy telling stories. You enjoy singing. You enjoy rapping. You enjoy creating whatever it is. You enjoy expressing it.
It's
and
the it's the
without
whole
health,
it's the whole thing of is it a means to an end or is it an end itself? Is it are you overvaluing the end result or are you enjoying the process?
I think it's both, right? I think it's, everything in life is a paradox and a contradiction, and it is and it isn't, right? But I think that it's specifically for art. Part of it is, yes, there's a lot of artists that I admire, and I've been that type of artist in the past, where you got to sacrifice yourself in order to make good art, right? If you're not sacrificing your life, if you're not sacrificing yourself, if you're not going to the depths of who you are and putting yourself at risk, if you're not doing your own stunts, then you're not a real actor, right? I've had that mentality before, but now I come from a place where, the outcome is important. Obviously, we're giving a message to people, but it's also about the expression. And if you don't have health, you can't enjoy the expression. I know from a personal experience, right? So yeah, you can still give the message, but if you're sacrificing your health, your mental states, now everyone has mental health issues because, I used to stay up all night writing, but then I wouldn't be functioning well the next day, and I would have to drink coffee. And then I drank so much coffee that I couldn't sleep, so I would just stay up writing. And then I had to drink more. But then the art was hindered by my lack of health, basically, because the health brought the consciousness, because I had to worry about too many other things other than just what was happening itself. So
very, very specific baton. How has being a father forced you to end those unproductive, unsustainable habits?
not just being a father, right? Because I know, and this is not to judge anyone, but I know people that it's the work. The work is the highest priority, right? And so they'll sacrifice fatherhood and they'll sacrifice being present with their kids for the work. Now, the way that I approach everything, fatherhood is priority, right? That's my biggest artistic project or masterpiece or whatever you want to call it. And if I don't have my health, if I don't have my mental peace, I can't be a father the way that I want to be, which is present, playful, loving, conscious, and yet creating structure and discipline and all these other seemingly contradictory things that really just blend into one. I can't be that if I'm falling asleep or if I got pain in my back. I can't sit with my daughter and play for a long time if I'm constantly switching positions because I'm uncomfortable. So then in order for me to be the best father I can be, my health has to be a priority, right? My mental health, my physical health, my emotional, my hormonal, everything has to be top notch so that I don't have to worry about myself. And I've always known that everything I learned in my health journey was going to help other people in the future. But I wasn't going to get to a place where I could share that knowledge until I don't need any help. Because if I need help, then why am I helping other people? And I see it all the time in the world. I see all these people that are constantly trying to help people, but they need help. And that's, they're trying to help people because they feel good about helping people, not because that's truly what they're called to, because obviously what they're called to is to help themselves, right? So
something there that goes all the way back to where we were a while ago, which is like, are they coming from a wound or are they coming from the soul? Which
right.
if you're coming from the soul, I can't help nobody. I'm bleeding. I gotta tend to this.
Right.
And my soul
Right.
needs my body. But
Right.
if you're coming from that wound and in denial of it, you are really living with those kind of blinders on, and not in a good way, not like a Kobe Bryant type of blinders on.
Right.
But in a way of like, well, shoot, ... But this sidebar scenic route here will it'll actually get back to this. But it's really the theme of this podcast. It's why I got led to do this podcast, because I have these conversations with people and I can't talk without being spiritual, because it's not spiritual
right.
to me. I started saying it in 2021. I said, there's no such thing as spirituality. Shut the fuck up. There's no such thing as spiritual. Oh, you're spiritual. What the fuck are you talking about? You're not.
To take it back to Steven Anderson, he told me this quote that when he was on a spiritual journey, he traveled the world to Tibet or to wherever, searching for this Rumpa, this mystical teacher that's supposed to have the answers of the universe. And he went over and he finally met him. And he said, "Please, what do you have to say to me? Tell me, what is the truth? What is God? What is the meaning of life?" And the guy just bent down and hit him in the head with his head. He bumped him. And that was the greatest spiritual teaching that he got. That was it. Like, it's amazing. Here. There's no words to it. Stop thinking about it.
All right, perfect. So, and you go to Joe, Buckingham on the side of the road there over by the gas station, living in the alley with his own shopping cart, and you ask Joe, "Hey man, what's the meaning of life?" And he might just say, "Can you give me $1?" But if you travel to that Rinpoche, you travel to this, Rumpa teacher, Shifu out in the mystics, and he freaking headbutts you, it's a pretty profound thing. And what that does is, I would say, it's a quantum mirror. And a real embodied soul is, and this is a selfish philosophy plug moment, but it's also the intention here. And when I interface with somebody that is bright and is living a beautiful embodied life, my inner child, and ever since I was young, I'd stare at it and I'd be like, what's the difference? Those people are unhappy. That person is really lit up. Huh. I was phenomenally confused by it, and it led to this journey of me seeking out what is the difference. So fully reflective. You say, Stephen goes and it's this dude. Can you imagine? Headbutts you. What an incredible! You're going home. I mean, I'm sure Stephen tells this story often. He's probably told that story of that since that's happened, because it's such a profound, here's the term, reflection. Because it says, stop looking out there. It's right here, dummy. It's right underneath this hard skull thing you got. But the baton of we started going, and then the baton of it is, someone that's in denial. They're not living a fun life. And if they're trying to serve from the ego and trying to serve because they want that social validation, I'm here to help people, it's what I'm really called to. Yeah, but then every night when you go to sleep, you're actually depressed when you wake up in the morning. And then as soon as you are able to serve someone else, you put on this persona of serving, but it's not from that 0 point soul self. And so what you pointed at with that whole thing of like, to me, that's not fully reflective. When someone is taking care of them, who's someone who's fully reflective to me? Tony Robbins, which I'm not essentially like an immediate follower of his lineage, but that dude is serving, and he's serving because he's taken care of. When someone's really taken care of, then they can really show up and take care of others.
Yeah, and I'll say something here, because yes, if I read something that he said, it's great. I just don't particularly enjoy his expression. I think he's a little too
the delivery.
But that's the delivery. But that's my subjective experience, right?
Right.
And I think that's it's tricky to say to people, because now where I live is, if I don't enjoy it, if it doesn't excite me, if I don't enjoy doing the thing, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
There's just, there's other purpose to do it, but I've gotten to a place in my life where I can make that choice. Now, I can't tell the Joe Schmo or whoever that needs $1, I'll just do things because you enjoy them, because he's in a position in life, in this system, in this world, where he can't do that. And it took me 30 years to be able to get into a position where I can. So now, I've always done things because I enjoy them, right? When I was very young, I was invited to a stage. I'm talking like 12, 13 years old. And it was the first time that I acted in a play. There was something that happened when I was on that stage that I just fell in love with. I said, this is amazing, right? But for where, I grew up in Tijuana, and it just the environment that I grew up in, to say that you were going to be a working actor, it was not realistic, and everyone shut that idea down, right? So it took me a long time to be able to accept that's what I want to do. I want to be an actor. I want to be in film. I want to paint for a living. I want to write script. I want to tell stories for a living. That's what I want to do. So I started seeing people that were doing it, and I realized that that's what I want to do. But where I was, it was going to take a long time for me able to do it, and it was going to take a lot of sacrifice and a lot of pain, sweat, and tears to be able to do what I wanted to do. Right? Washing dishes, parking cars, going to a country where I had no family, I didn't know anyone, learning a language, like all the things that I had to do to make this reality happen were not enjoyable per se, but they were helping me break free from that system, right? So if you're still doing it, if you're still washing dishes to get that paycheck, to pay rent, to be able to stay in this city, to be able to go to auditions, the purpose of it all is to get to a place where you can do what you enjoy and you can get paid for it, or you can make a living off it. So now washing dishes becomes enjoyable because you're aligned with that purpose. But if you're just washing dishes because you're just trying to survive and you have no goal, you have no purpose, then that experience can become suffering, right? So you can't tell that person, oh, just go do what you enjoy and make a living off of it, because it's going to take 20 years to be able to do that. Just because the system is not set up like that, right? Most people in society are not doing what they enjoy. Very few people are truly following their bliss. And those people are usually not calling the shots. And you can tell the people in power, some of them, are smiling. Some of them are good actors, but some of them look miserable. Some of them look depressed. Some of them look unhealthy, right? But those are the gatekeepers of society that we are born into it. So if they're not following the bliss, we can't just follow the bliss because we're within the system. We got to be able to get to a point within the system or outside of the system and that's going to take like 20 years of sacrifice.
There's a system. There is an escape route, which again, Bruce Lee, the way out is through.
Right.
A dear mentor of ours, Colleen, talks about boots on the ground, seeing the divinity, seeing the spiritual in the mud, seeing the divinity in the mundane and the ordinary, the extraordinary in the ordinary, which to me, you were talking about it in, you got to remind yourself of why you're doing the dishes. But if you don't have connection to that purpose of why what are you really moving towards, then this is all there is. That's enough to make somebody go nuts.
I have a good one. One of the main conflicts I had with this film that I directed, because I was hired to direct it. It wasn't my original idea, so I didn't have full creative say. One of the big issues I had was through film, I like to show the ordinary of life, right? My favorite filmmakers, from Andrei Tarkovsky to Bellatar to Terrence Malick to the list goes on and on, they find the spiritual in the mundane. They find the divine in the worldly, So now a scene about somebody washing dishes, that can be so mystical if it's captured right. So my goal as a filmmaker has always been that. And I try to do it with this film. And the conflict was that the investors, which were also the executive producers, they were so caught up in the story. There's no point to waste 5 minutes in watching this person wash dishes because it doesn't move the story forward. Well, you apply that to life. They live in the story. They're not in the moment. They don't see that washing the dishes can be as magical as making an art piece or making love to your lover or going for everything has the mystical within it, right? And so because they don't live their life like that, they obviously can't see that a film can be successful and can be a good film if they just see it as a waste of scene, right? But it's being able to see that and integrate that where it's not just in art, but it's in everything you do in life. And now, talking to you, I'm doing it because there is enjoyment here. There's a purpose for a podcast to give out a message but I've had many invitations to do podcasts. I've had many interviews. I don't necessarily enjoy talking to that person that much. So talking to them for an hour and a half, sure. Can the message is going to get out no matter what, whether I write it on a tweet or I write it into a script or I paint the painting or I speak to you, the message is going to get out. Do I enjoy doing the activity that partakes in expressing the message? That's my question now, because I'm in a position where I can do that, So yes, we're speaking about things that people might benefit, whether it's I'm giving my testimony in health or whatever, but I also enjoy talking to you about these things. So it really boils down to, do you enjoy doing that thing or not? Because if you enjoy it, that's your bliss, and that the bliss is the greatest wink of the universe telling you you're aligned with the purpose. You're in tune.
Love that. That's a great statement. In this online course that moves through me, we talk about it as dissolving the 3 and the 4, which you could call the 3-dimensional space that we live in, that we navigate with our body and as our body. Space is 3-dimensional, width, up and down, height, and back and forward depth. And then time is the thing that gives us this sense of continuity within this space. But when we're really doing something we love, what space? There is no space. We merge that space. So in this almost nearing 90 minutes,
my computer's running out of battery.
Oh, I know that jazz. That's a great jazz. This is live jazz here, folks. The modern day jazz dance of "Where's My Charger?"
Got it. We keep going.
Well, cool metaphor too, because you don't charge your batteries, you can't use the thing that you want to, use.
Right.
Man, my closest proximity, divine mirror, goddess, priestess, best friend, Belle, and I were talking about that last night, actually, where it's like, it's so easy to just take the relationship for granted and just use it and be like, yeah, it's great. And then all of a sudden we come to someone comes to a moment where you want to use your car and you just want to drive, but you haven't changed the oil in 5 months, bro. Oh, your tire's flat. Man, I'm gonna be super strong. Yeah, when was the last time you stretched your neck?
Right.
And it's in these moments where we get reflected back to us if we haven't been present with the thing that nourishes the thing that we want to use.
Right.
I want to just paint. Well, yeah, paint, go ahead. But you can't paint what you want to paint, because when was the last time you ever painted? There's that reflection. So in closing, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, because I deal with my daughter a lot, right? In that sense, like, she does these things that are complete pure expression of her spirit. I'm like, that's beautiful. Can you do it again? Let me capture her on camera. And she can't do it, right? So, when you talk about acting, you always want to get to that state of innocence, of childlike expression. But if you put a kid in front of a camera, they don't have to craft. So in order for that expression from your spirit to happen, you got to develop, I would say, 10,000 hours or 20 years of craft to be able to just let the brush go. Like, people love Basquiat. And some people that don't know art, they'll look at Basquiat and be like, that's, a child can paint that. What is that art? But when you really understand the craft and the way, what it takes to bring that brush that effortlessly over to make this color, and those, to combine those colors, it takes so much craft. So it takes a lot of time of doing things that don't bring enjoyment, to be able to do that one thing, that one moment, to be able to get the ball at the buzzer and make the shot with 50,000 people in the crowd screaming. And when you were a kid, you were doing it effortlessly, and you were always in the flow, you were always in tune, and you didn't care until you had to do it. Now we have to develop this craft to be able to get to that point of not caring. But now you've cared so much that you don't have to care. It just comes through.
In closing, although we've already said it maybe 15 different times in different ways, which is the perfect version of it, what does that mean to you, to be fully reflective?
To be fully reflected or reflective?
Yeah, very different. I would say fully reflective.
To be so mentally clear that my baggage isn't coming in between what our other being is needing reflection on, right? Whether consciously or unconsciously. And that takes the daily work of sitting down and watching the mental chatter slowly dissipate, so that you're able to be that clear, pristine mirror. I mean, that's what acting is, right? Acting is a reflection. There's no initiation. There's an energy back and forth, a ping pong, right? They're going to cut from you to cut to them, to cut to them, to cut, and the energy has to be bouncing back. So if you're coming in with a bunch of stuff, the energy is going to get, it's not going to flow as good. It's not going to go back and forth. It's going to get caught up in your own psyche. And the same with reflection. So I think being reflective is being, it's funny, in the name of Bruce Lee, is being like water. It's being crystal clear. It's being clean, in tune, ready to be played, ready for the music to flow back and forth.
Couldn't have said it better. Man, I love this. I love being able to jazz with you in this format. I love you. These are precious conversations, and
Yes,
Yeah, man. So much coming up, and I look forward to sharing all the stuff that we're gonna be alchemizing together, and that's another conversation. But anything in closing, anything you want to bring attention to? Where can people find more about what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, we can keep talking about this forever, right? Because people have been talking about it forever. Because what we're pointing at doesn't, it cannot be contained within words, right?
Or
So,
time?
or time. You can make, you can make as many paintings as you want and write as many poems as you want, and you're still not going to get to the thing. So we can talk about it forever. In terms of my work, you can find me on Instagram, Octavio Pisano, or Twitter, although I don't really use Twitter that much. And again, I don't post. I always have the intention behind my posts as if I die, because sometimes I'll go to people that passed away, and I'll go to the Instagram and I'll look at and I've never looked at their page before, but because they passed away, they're in my consciousness. So I look, all of a sudden I get their whole life and everything. So I'm realizing now that every time I post as if I'm going to die tomorrow. And what would the person that come to my page see? Would they get a clear understanding of who I am? Or is it just what is it? And sometimes I look at it as a gallery, right? That's like things that I like. But yeah, you can find my work there. And yeah, that's true.
Perfect. Beautiful. Thank you for joining me here today in this way. Appreciate you. Feel like there's going to be another great check-in on this format at another time, but I feel like that concludes this chapter.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me, bro.
Yeah, brother. Thank you. Have an amazing rest of your day, and we'll talk more soon about all these creative things that are blossoming.
Yes, sir.
Cool. Blessings. Thank you all for joining.
You too, brother.
See you soon. Bliss.